Welcome to Stories of Brave Mothers, a channel dedicated to telling real and touching stories of brave mothers from around the world.
Would you have the courage to bike 50 miles through a snowstorm, hungry, freezing, and in pain, just for a chance to save your child? She did, and she did it alone. No car, no help, no plan B. In this true and deeply moving story, you'll meet Sarah, a valorous mother from rural America who turned desperation into strength when her son's life was on the line. Get ready to follow a journey that will touch your heart from beginning to end, and maybe even change the way you see the true meaning of a mother's love. In the heart of a small town in rural Kansas, where wheat fields stretch as far as the eye can see and the streets feel frozen in time, lived Sarah Whitmore, a 37-year-old single mother. Life there was simple. No big supermarkets, no advanced hospitals. The nearest medical clinic was nearly 25 miles away, and public transportation almost non-existent. If you didn't have a car, you relied on luck or your own 2 feet. Sarah lived with her 8-year-old son, Eli, in a small white wooden house with a front porch, a family heirloom passed down from her grandparents. Eli's father had disappeared before the boy was even born, and ever since, it had been just the two of them, against the world. Sarah worked part-time at a local bakery, waking up every day before sunrise to prepare batches of bread, cakes, and cookies that warmed the souls of anyone who walked in. Money was tight, and times were hard, with inflation reaching even the most remote corners of Kansas, and the rising cost of groceries and fuel. Sarah fought daily to keep the bills paid and food on the table. But she never complained. Not once. To outsiders, Sarah seemed like just a simple woman. Soft features, brown hair tied in a bun, and hands calloused from work. But to Eli, she was a warrior. A valorous mother who never let a morning go by without a smile, even on the days when the fridge echoed with emptiness. Little Eli was bright, loving, and very fragile. Since infancy, he had suffered from severe respiratory issues, a form of asthma that required constant medication. The prescriptions weren't cheap, and sometimes they were only available at larger pharmacies in neighboring towns. Sarah did everything she could to keep his treatment consistent, but lately, things had become even more difficult. On a freezing January morning, with wind that cut like blades and snow that made roads nearly impassable, Eli woke up gasping for air, sweating, his face pale. The wheezing in his chest was loud enough to hear across the room. Sarah knew that sound well. It was the warning of a serious crisis. She rushed to the dresser where she kept his medication, but the inhaler was empty. Heart pounding, she tried the old nebulizer, but the liquid medicine it used had run out 2 days earlier. All she had left was fear. She called the local pharmacy. Out of stock. Called 2 others nearby. Same answer. Yes, we have it, but only at the Garnett location 25 miles from here. That meant a 50-mile round trip, and worse. Delivery would take at least 2 days. 2 days was too long. Eli needed the medicine that very morning. He could barely lift himself from bed, and his breathing was growing weaker. Sarah thought about asking for a ride, but there were no neighbors available, no friends with cars. The local gas station had shut down the week before, and the only truck at the bakery was out on long deliveries. She looked at Eli, lying there, gasping like a fish out of water, and made her decision. She opened the wooden garage behind the house and pulled out an old bicycle she hadn't touched in years, a dark blue Schwinn with a torn seat and flat tires. She filled the tires using a manual pump she found among her grandfather's tools, strapped on a backpack, and took the small stash of money she'd hidden in a cookie jar. She layered on 3 sets of clothes, a wool beanie, and thick gloves. Then she left a note for Eli on the kitchen table, along with a glass of milk and the last piece of carrot cake. "Mommy's going to get your medicine. Don't worry, I'll be back soon." With her heart breaking and tears in her eyes, She kissed her sleeping boy's forehead and stepped out, pushing the bike through the icy buildup on the driveway. The first few miles were the easiest. The sun was just beginning to rise, and the frost-covered dirt road looked more beautiful than treacherous. Sarah pedaled with determination, as if every meter conquered was a battle won. The wind sliced her face like razor blades, but she pressed on. There was no other option. Her son's life depended on it. By mile 6, she felt her thighs burning. The road became bumpier, and the tires slipped in slick patches. A pickup truck sped past, spraying her with cold, dirty snow. But Sarah didn't flinch. She just pulled her coat tighter and kept going. As she crossed the small bridge over Dry Creek, a chill ran down her spine. She remembered her mother's voice saying, "You're stronger than you think, sweetheart." And in that moment, she had to believe it. At mile 12, she stopped in front of a closed convenience store, took a sip from a water bottle she'd brought, and ate a granola bar she'd saved for emergencies. The sky was already darkening, even though it was barely noon, thick clouds warning of an incoming winter storm. But there was no turning back, no stopping. By mile 18, just outside Garnett, she started getting cramps in her arms from gripping the handlebars too tightly. The cold made her fingers numb. She thought about crying, thought about quitting, but the image of Eli, struggling to breathe, defenseless and alone, burned in her chest. That valorous mother was willing to go all the way. When she finally reached the pharmacy, sweating under her layers, shivering from the cold, the staff was stunned to see her walk in with a snow-covered bicycle. She handed over the prescription, explained the situation, and a clerk named Janet, upon hearing the story, ran to the back and brought out the medications. She even tossed in a free mask and a backup inhaler. Sarah thanked her with a choked voice, swallowed her tears, and prepared for the return trip. But the road back would bring challenges of its own. Sarah had gotten the medicine. Her trembling hands held the pharmacy bag with the reverence of someone carrying life itself, because deep down, that's exactly what she was doing. Those vials meant hope, relief, breath. They represented a chance to keep her son alive, but there were still 25 miles of icy road ahead of her. And now, time seemed to be racing against her. When she stepped out of the pharmacy in Garnett, the sky was already completely overcast. The weather forecast warned of a snowstorm within hours, and the wind had started howling like a dark omen. Janet, the pharmacy clerk, even begged Sarah to stay in town until the storm passed. She offered her own couch, but Sarah declined, her smile faint and her eyes resolute. "My son's waiting for me," she said, and off she went, pushing the bike, her coat pulled tight around her body, and the bag of medicine tied to the handlebars with an old shoelace. In the first few miles of the return, Sarah tried to keep a steady pace, but her body was already exhausted. Her muscles burned, her fingers could barely grip the handlebars, and her throat ached from the cold air. Still, she pedaled, and every turn of the wheel was an act of love, a declaration of resistance. Soon, the snow began to fall, lightly at first, like a silent dance, then heavier. Thick flakes covered the road, making it nearly impossible to see more than 30 feet ahead. The already deserted road now looked like a white corridor, endless and silent. The world had turned to frost and silence. The bike kept slipping. Sarah fell, once, twice, 3 times. On the last fall, she hit her knee hard and cried out in pain. Her pants tore, and the wound quickly mixed with icy water, burning like fire. But she got up. She always did. Around mile 6 of the return, a stronger gust of wind shoved the bike off the road and into a shallow ditch. Sarah tried to keep her balance but fell again, this time face down in the snow. Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, but no voice came out. All she could think about was Eli, how he must be feeling. Alone, scared, maybe worse. She stood up slowly, crying in silence. Her face was bright red, eyelashes crusted with ice. But there was no time for pain, no space for fear. She grabbed the bike, now with a crooked handlebar, and limped back to the road. That's when she heard a sound, faint, almost like a whisper in the storm. An engine, a car, a truck. Sarah ran to the center of the road and waved her arms frantically, desperate, as if begging for a miracle. But the vehicle sped by far off in the distance. It didn't slow down. Maybe it hadn't seen her. Maybe it just didn't care. She stood there, frozen, in shock. Then she shouted, but the wind swallowed her voice like dust. The loneliness in that moment weighed more than the cold. And for the first time in years, she thought, what if I don't make it? But then, something lit up inside her like burning coal. A force only mothers know. A revolt against her own doubt. She wiped her face with a wet sleeve and whispered to herself, there is no what if. I will make it. I will. And she kept going. By mile 9, the pain in her knee was unbearable. Every pedal felt like a needle stabbing her flesh. Her legs shook. She began alternating, pedaling with one leg, then walking beside the bike. The ground had become frozen mud. Every step was a fight against gravity. That's when her vision began to blur at the edges. Hunger, exhaustion, extreme cold. Sarah hadn't eaten properly since breakfast the day before. Her body was burning calories at a desperate rate, and she could no longer feel her toes. She stopped at a small, abandoned bus stop on the roadside, a wooden shelter, falling apart. She sat down, gasping, trying to catch her breath, rested her head against the wall, eyes closed. She thought she'd rest just 5 minutes. Just 5. But her head started to nod. Then she heard Eli's voice. Not really, but in her mind, as if he were right there in her lap. Mommy, I'm scared. She opened her eyes instantly. It was like her instincts had ripped through the fog. She looked at the sky, half the way still to go. But now she had something more, a reminder of why she had to keep going. She stood with difficulty, took a sip from the now half-frozen water bottle, and moved on. By mile 15, things got worse. The wind turned into a full-blown storm. Snow fell in heavy sheets. And then, disaster. The rear tire went flat. Sarah tried pushing forward anyway, but the wheels sank into the snow and locked up. With no other option, she took the medicine bag, tied it tightly to her back, and began walking, dragging the bike behind her, the bent rims scraping the icy road. She was walking now, just walking. Time had lost all meaning. Her legs didn't even hurt anymore. They'd gone beyond pain. All that remained was instinct. At mile 18, she saw the sign for the neighboring town, Maple Ridge, the second to last stop before home. There, she spotted a small chapel, lights on, a glimmer of hope. She stepped inside and collapsed to her knees. The priest, a man in his 70s, rushed to her side, helped her sit, offered her hot soup. Sarah ate slowly, hands barely able to hold the bowl. She cried in silence, didn't share the whole story, just enough for him to understand. When she mentioned Eli's name, her voice cracked. He's waiting for me. I just need to get back. The priest looked at her with a mix of tenderness and awe. He didn't preach, didn't speak of faith. He simply draped a blanket over her shoulders and handed her a flashlight to face the final stretch. Sarah left the chapel with her heart a little warmer. The soup helped. So did the kindness. But she still had nearly 6 miles to go. The last stretch was the hardest. Her legs trembled. The flashlight flickered. The road disappeared beneath the snow. But she kept going, like a moving shadow, like a flesh and bone lighthouse, trying to make it back to shore. When she saw the first fences of her neighborhood, her chest tightened. Emotions swelled in her throat. The house was still far, but visible, almost touchable. She ran with what little strength she had left, ran like her life depended on it, because, in a way, it did. She climbed the porch steps, legs wobbling, pushed the door open. The kitchen light was on. Eli was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, pale but awake. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "Mommy," he whispered. She dropped to her knees beside him, pulled the medicine from the bag with trembling hands, prepared the inhaler, and placed it to his mouth, held it firmly as her son took in the first breath of relief. It took a few seconds. Then the wheezing in his chest began to fade. Sarah cried harder than she'd ever cried. A cry of pain and relief and victory. She had made it. But what no one knew yet was that this wouldn't be her last battle. That night, while the wind still howled outside and snow began piling up on the windows, Sarah sat on the living room floor, leaning against the couch, with Eli asleep in her lap. He was breathing better now. The soft sound of the inhaler still echoed from time to time, mixed with the faint wheezing in the child's chest. Much weaker than before, she watched him silently, as if trying to memorize every detail of his face, his slightly sweaty forehead, cheeks flushed from the effort of breathing, and the way he clutched her shirt even in sleep, like someone holding onto an anchor in the middle of the sea. Sarah was exhausted. Her body felt like stone and ice. Her knee throbbed. Her muscles screamed. But what hurt the most was her heart. That night had changed something inside her, as if she'd been pierced by a truth that had always been there, but now pulsed louder than ever. A mother's love knows no limits. The next morning, Sarah woke up in her own bed. She didn't even remember how she got there, just remembered carrying Eli to his room. And then, darkness. When she opened her eyes, she saw her son's face beside her, eyes sparkling. "You really came back, Mommy?" She smiled, unable to hold back her tears. "I told you I would, my love." Eli curled up in her lap, and the two of them stayed there for long minutes, holding each other in silence. It was as if that moment said it all. As if, in that embrace, there was a healing no medicine on earth could provide. In the days that followed, word of Sarah's journey began to spread, first among neighbors, who noticed bike tracks on the snow-covered road. Then, from the pharmacy clerks in Garnett, who told customers about the woman who biked 50 miles through a blizzard to save her son. Soon, the story reached a reporter from the local community radio station. The interview took place a week later. Sarah didn't want to appear. She didn't think she'd done anything special. But she was convinced by Janet, the pharmacy clerk, who insisted, "Sarah, people need to hear this story. The world needs a reminder of what real love looks like." On the radio show, Sarah told her journey simply. No drama, no heroism. Just as if she had done what any mother would. But her words, spoken with humility and emotion, touched listeners deeply. "I just thought about my son. When you're a mother, you don't measure the distance. You just go." The interview went viral. Soon, a local TV station showed up. Then, an article on a national news site. Within days, the image of Sarah, with her rusty bike, bandaged knee, and Eli in her arms, became a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and love. Messages poured in from all over. People saying they were inspired, that they cried hearing her story. Mothers who saw themselves in her. Grown children who called their moms after years apart. Teachers, doctors, even politicians, moved by the quiet greatness of her act. And with that came help. A teacher from a nearby town started a fundraiser. The idea was simple. Buy Sarah a used car so she'd never have to make that kind of journey on foot again. In just 2 days, over $25,000 was raised. But Sarah turned down the car. "There are others who need it more. I just need a job that lets me take care of Eli without leaving him alone." Her response touched people even more. The town's school offered her a job as an administrative assistant, with flexible hours and health insurance. The local church began helping with food, and even the bakery where she used to work agreed to double her pay per shift. More than that, Sarah's story sparked something in the community itself. Neighbors who barely spoke started offering help to one another. A group of volunteers set up a transportation network for mothers with sick children, and the small town of Rosehill, once forgotten on the map, became a symbol of empathy. But for Sarah, the greatest reward wasn't in the spotlight, or in the donations, or in the media attention. It was in the small things, like the sound of Eli's breathing, finally clear, or the smile he gave when she walked into the room, or the moment he said, one quiet evening, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be strong like you." That made it all worth it. As the months passed, life settled into a calmer rhythm. Eli continued with regular medical care. His treatment was now consistent, and Sarah no longer had to worry about running out of medication. But she never stopped being who she was, a simple woman, soft-spoken, who still rode her bike, even after everything. One spring Sunday, the community organized a surprise tribute for her. On the school's field, with colorful signs and flowers everywhere, children, parents, and neighbors gathered to say thank you. The mayor gave a heartfelt speech, and in the end, they handed Sarah a plaque that read, "To Sarah Whitmore, the valorous mother who showed us what true love really means." She held the plaque, eyes brimming with tears, and simply said, "I'm just a mom, that's all." But everyone there knew, everyone felt it, that it wasn't just, it was everything. If this story touched your heart, if you also believe that no distance is too far when it comes to a mother's love, then don't leave without hitting that like button. And if you want to hear more real stories of valorous mothers like Sarah, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because here, every story is a tribute to the strength only a mother can have.